took the notes. He was shocked at especially the behaviour of the Chinese Medical Board here in Victoria, who are laying ownership to the words herbalist and acupuncture. They own those words according to their state law. Now, you can't do that. Again, this is an inconsistency. We have copyright law that says it's generic. You cannot have ownership over these sort of words.
Where come Vic Rhodes owns Vic Rhodes? He's a New Zealander. A bloody Kiwi. And he owns Vic Rhodes. He takes half the percentage out.
Doesn't sue you if you use the word, though.
Yeah.
Right?
He doesn't try to sue you.
Anyway, we'll move on. This is where we've scheduled our special guest tonight, Professor Spencer Zifsha from the Australian Catholic University. So I'll call on the Professor, who I can't introduce him any better than that because I know very little about the gentleman, but I'm sure he can talk for himself. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm absolutely delighted to see so many people in one room who have a really strong interest in the law and in particular in constitutional law. There was a survey done now about 5 years ago. It was...
Excuse me, Professor, could you spell your surname, please?
Z-I-F-C-H-A-K.
Go ahead.
C-H-A-K.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you don't mind me filming you at all, do you?
The survey was a random sample of Australians, and one of the questions was, to your knowledge, does Australia have a constitution? Only 10% of people knew that Australia has a constitution. 10%.
So many people were involved?
It was a survey of about 2,000 people.
That's scary.
Scary.
Yes.
Absolutely scary. And I was looking, just as we came in, to my colleagues over here, and we all agreed that something has to be done within the framework of our school system to make sure that students know something about the law and something about their rights under the law. Now, it won't surprise you to hear me saying this. I've been a lawyer for a long time. I left university, went and did my articles with the former Premier of Victoria, John Cain. And then I went and practiced as a barrister for 5 years, doing mainly family and criminal law matters. After that, I got interested in legal policy and public policy. Went and did a PhD in the UK, came back to take up the position of Deputy Director of Policy in the Victorian Attorney General's Department. And I worked in that position for 3.5 years. And following from that, I took the position as Director of Research with the Legal and Constitutional Committee of the Victorian Parliament. And the Legal and Constitutional Committee, similar committee still exists now, is the committee of the Victorian Parliament that examines all regulations for consistency with their overarching statutes and the consistency of regulations and statutes with the Australian Constitution. So I got to do quite a bit of work in the sorts of field that we're talking about this evening. I was so interested in the whole constitutional question that I decided I'd leave public service and got a position as a senior lecturer at La Trobe University, and there I taught constitutional law for 15 years. The other branch of what I taught during that time was human rights law. And now I've got a research institute at the Australian Catholic University. It's a research institution that looks at international law, comparative constitutional law, and international and national human rights law. So that gives you a little bit of an idea about where I come from in relation to all of the sorts of matters that you're raising this evening. And I'm interested in the questions you're asking because I think they're important questions. I warn you in advance, I may not agree with the presumptions behind your questions. If I don't, I do it on the basis of 20 years' experience of teaching constitutional law. But what is impressive about this gathering is that you're so damn interested in the issue. And the more people who are interested in it, the more people who take an interest in what the government is doing, how the government is operating, whether or not it's operating consistently with the Constitution and so on, the better it is going to be for the civic life of this country. And that's why I applaud you being here, and it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now, we have an opportunity for those of you who have got questions to ask the learned Professor questions, and he will endeavour to answer them. You may not always like the answers, but let us remember that here we're all gentlemen and ladies and we're always polite. Okay? I call on Cole first.
Probably going to hate me for this. The time you spent studying and teaching, and you run a survey that said 10% of people, only 10% of people know about constitutional law. Yep. Or know anything about the Constitution.
Only 10% of people knew we had a Constitution.
Right.
That's different.
But does that...
Even less people know what's in the Constitution.
I'm still learning. I've been coming to these meetings for something like 4 years. Yeah. I'm still blown away every time I come. They just buzz out something new, and it's like a 22 bullet going around here. The thing is, how do you look at yourself with all the years you've been teaching, and there's only just a small number of people? Do you think you've missed the plot?
No, I don't think so. I mean, over the 20 years or so that I've been teaching constitutional law, I probably would have taught somewhere in the vicinity of 3,000 people, and they would have talked to a whole lot of other people. So no, I'm not troubled by that at all. But I think the key point that I'd like to make about that, and it's something that I try to overcome in my own career, but too few people who are in academic life do. Not enough people who are interested in issues like this, politics, constitutional law, actually leave the university to go out and talk to ordinary people about it. So all of the knowledge gets kept in the university and doesn't get spread out into the wider community. And that's a big fault of universities generally. And that's why I, in my career, have done a whole pile of other stuff which I can talk to you about, including, for example, I spent 2 years up in East Timor helping them draft their constitution. So academics, they shouldn't live in their ivory towers. They should be out there telling people, some of your knowledge and saying, well, all right, what are the problems? Let's work together to try and resolve some of the problems.
Now, I think
I always
Alan-
try to
Alan's
do that,
next on the list.
but it doesn't happen nearly often enough.
All right, I'll try and get to you all.
Very much.
But Alan's next, so and then Peter and then
Thank you, Professor. I'm asked. Could you tell me the reasons why in 1975 the Constitution stopped being taught in schools, colleges, and universities? 1975. Sudden stop. Stop with them.
I'm not aware that it was stopped.
Yeah.
I'm not aware that it was stopped. I did my law degree over the period between 1973 and 1976. Nothing stopped. So I have to disagree with the assumption behind your question. As far as I'm aware, there was no stop. Everything continued more or less as normal. But you might be referring to something a little bit different, so perhaps you'd like to expand on what you're saying.
No, I've just heard from various sources that it was removed from the schools, colleges and universities. And I won't take up too much time, but do you agree with that, sir? That's probably why 10% only know about the Constitution.
All right, back to your question. As far as I'm aware, nothing stopped, okay?
Yeah.
So,
But it's not.
I can't advance anything further than that. I was doing law at the time. I went and practiced law immediately after that time, in the late 1970s, early 80s. Nothing stopped in relation to the teaching of the Constitution. It may not have been done well enough. It may not have been done widely enough. Maybe not to enough people who are brought into the process of understanding the Constitution. But as far as I'm aware, absolutely nothing stopped. So that's the only answer I can give to that.
Right, we'll call on Peter now. Peter has the next question.
Hey, thank you, Professor.
Yes.
Professor, I just wanted to ask, is it fair to say, do you agree, that everything that Darryl O'Brien was saying before in respect to the Victorian Constitution and the Australia Act and the Magistrates Court Act 1989 basically pretty much being invalid? Would you agree with that point?
No, I don't.
No?
No, I don't agree with that.
Why's that?
I'd like to explore the arguments a little bit more carefully. You know, the Constitution is an immensely complex document. It's an immensely complex document. It's a document that took 10 years to draft. Yeah? There were several conventions between 1890 and 1900. And it's an immensely complex document because in just a few pages, what the Constitution does is set out the powers of each and every branch of government. It defines the branches of government. It establishes a federal system. It talks about the relationship between the Commonwealth government and the state government. It includes 2 or 3 rights. It encapsulates judicial independence, which was what was said before, and all of those parts interact in quite a complex way. So, I'm not saying that everything about the Constitution is clear. Everything about the Constitution is not clear. That's inevitable because it's complicated, and that's why we've got a High Court to interpret it.
Yes. I was also referring to what you were saying about Section 15 of the Victorian Constitution 1975 being inconsistent with basically Section 61 of the Australian Constitution, and just the little points that explain the explanation which you agree with. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, look, I'd be happy to deal with that. But if we're going to deal with it, we need to deal with it point by point.
Definitely.
So, if you want to come back later in the meeting, we'll talk a little bit more about what Section 15 means and how it fits into the broader context of the Constitution. Happy to do that. But insofar as a general statement is being made that everything that a state government does is invalid, I do not believe that's right.
No,
I do not believe
you must
that's
have
right.
misunderstood what I said.